In this video, I'm going to talk about the new album by Revocation called Netherheaven, released on September 9th, 2022. This band is a technical death metal band from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the band, the members. I'll give my thoughts on the new album, and I'll give my final thoughts and score at the end of the video. So, Revocation is a band. They were around in the early 2000s. They had a different name called Cryptic Warning. But the band Revocation has been active since 2006, and they had the same members. So it's basically it was one band kind of evolved into the next band. It's three members. The guitarist and vocalist name is David Davidson, and he studied music at Berkeley. So his style incorporates a lot of jazz and polyrhythms. His playing is very complex and unique. He has a very harsh death metal style, but you can also understand everything he's saying. And also in this band, we have Brett Bamberger and Ash Peterson on bass and drums, respectively. So this band is a three-piece. Now, usually when I review a tech death album, the process is a little more difficult than other albums, especially if it's a band I'm not very familiar with. Now, this is a band I have listened to before. I remember listening to their previous album that was called The Outer Ones from 2018, and it was something good. I found it enjoyable. They are one of the first tech death bands I started listening to a few years ago, and actually didn't realize it until recently, but they do have 8 albums in total. So it's a band that puts out albums about every 1 or 2 years, but this is actually the longest gap they had between albums, and we can blame the pandemic for that. Like I was saying, with this kind of music, doing this review was kind of a challenge because the music was so technical, and when I talk about the songs, I have to find a way to make it interesting, or else, people are just going to click off and go to the next video. It's a type of music that if you listen to it just once and you're not familiar with the type of music, it's just going to be a lot of death growls, fast riffs, and blast beats. So I'm going to try to point out what stands out on each song, and I'll delve into the lyrical content as well, because the lyrics actually play an important part of this album. The album's a good length, 9 songs, 44 minutes. There's one instrumental, I'll get into that, and let's talk about the songs. So, Diabolical Majesty. Now, let me first say, when listening to this album, I listened to it 3 times in full. So the second time around, one thing I did is I noticed the lyrics, and I was kind of reading the lyrics along as I listened to it. And this song, Diabolical Majesty, it talks about occult themes and, lots of dark subjects. Basically painting a picture of hell and, the kind of stuff that you expect in a tech death song. But like I was saying, this band writes intelligent lyrics. So as I'm reading along, I found myself Googling words I'm unfamiliar with. And, they talk a lot about these ancient cities and things that we'll be mentioning throughout the rest of the video. So let me continue. Lessons in Occult Theft. That one talked about the spirit boards, demonic rituals, and all that horror movie stuff. For me, the guitar solo stood out in this song. It's just very melodic, and you heard a slight jazz influence in the melody, and it kind of was in sync with just the heavy nature of the song. Nihilistic Violence made me think of classic thrash metal at first. Now, they use a lot of palm muted open strings, and let me also say that this band uses 7-string guitars and kind of gives it that little extra sound quality. But they did a lot of that galloping of the palm muted strings, and that made this stand out. The song's about violence, a falling empire, and I found it interesting. They kind of mentioned Abraxas, and something I only knew from that Santana album of the same name, but it's a name that goes back to Greek religion. So again, this is the type of album that, you find these words and you end up reading all these different pages about these different cities and empires. But moving on, Strange and Eternal dealt with occult and evil writings, and the thing that stood out in this song was using time signature changes. They kind of go from fast and heavy to other passages, and they'd have these abrupt rhythm changes. Like the other songs in the album, the music is very dense, lots of twists and turns throughout the album. Another thing that stood out was the different vocal style towards the end of the song. They were kind of doing some type of like ritualistic chanting, and that like made the song like very like dark. Then Galleries of Morbid Artistry. The song has a lot going on. It's the first song on the album where they open with a slower pace and clean guitars. I think they were going for more of like an atmospheric feel with this one. You do hear like more complexity in the guitar chords and riffs. And they use some different vocal styles throughout the song. The lyrics paint a picture of a place filled with like dead bodies on display, a place of horror, torture, those types of things. Types of lyrics, the kind of lyrics that you would, from a Cannibal Corpse song, I would say, describing like these like ghastly horrors. And another thing that stood out was like this brief jazz interlude, and that made the song kind of stand out amongst the others. Then the ninth Chasm, it's an instrumental. That title is from Dante's Inferno. It's a very complex song and very dense like the rest of the album. Godforsaken is a very descriptive song about the end of days. Lyrics describing horrors that the world will suffer, the world is coming to an end. Song uses slower rhythms with some technical riffs. There's a breakdown where they incorporate some melodic lead guitar playing on top of those death metal screams, and followed by a complex guitar solo. The intervening abyss of Untold, Aeons, very complex name. This one has a slow intro, but then it's like gets like really heavy and brutal afterwards. And lyrics talk about end of days and fallen empires. And the thing that stands out in this one is like some of the bass playing. Like you hear those like bass notes like really like pop out like throughout the song. That was really good. And the last song is the one that's probably like their biggest song because it has two guest vocalists. We have Trevor Strunad, the vocalist from Black Dahlia Murder. He actually passed away this year. And George Corpse Grinder Fisher from Cannibal Corpse. And they take turns with their verses, and it makes the song very unique. And I found the lyrics very interesting because it's talking about somebody who dies, they're rejected at the gates of heaven and sent down below, and all the horrors that would happen afterwards. But it's the kind of story you would kind of like hear during a church sermon. So I thought that one was very interesting. By the way, that song is called Re-Crucified, if I didn't mention it. And now for my final thoughts. A lot of other channels are calling this the best tech death album of 22. For me, it was good. I haven't decided if it's the best. There were a lot of great albums this year, and a lot of great like tech death this weekend in particular. I didn't listen to them all, but I will get to that eventually, and I'll probably mention a few in my best metal of the month video. But this is an album where the lyrics are very intelligent. Every song tells a story. The lyrics are very deep, and that really stood out. So it will probably be on my top 10 death metal albums list at the end of the year. I don't know if it's going to be number one, but it will be on that list. I can tell you that. My score for now, I'm going to give it like an 8 out of 10. It's still new. This is the kind of music you kind of like need some time to digest. But that's my score for now. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And up next, there will be KMFDM. That's the industrial metal band. They've been around a long time. I'll do that. And I want to do an Ozzy Osbourne ranking in the middle of the week. So that's what I have planned. That is all. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.